The buzz around the Sean Combs trial is just intense, isn't it? I mean, you hear about these lines, people trying to sell spots to get in. It's really something else.
It absolutely is a total media event.
But you're here because you want to get past all that noise, right? You want to know what's actually happening as this thing kicks off.
Exactly. Forget the celebrity side for a second. This deep dive, we're really focusing on these crucial first stages of the federal racketeering and sex trafficking trial against Diddy.
Yeah, we want to unpack the legal moves, what it feels like in the courtroom, and maybe what it tells us about, well, fame and the law colliding.
And we've gone through a lot to get here. News reports, courtroom accounts, legal analysis.
Trying to boil it all down for you, basically. Give you the stuff that really matters away from the gossip columns.
Think of it like a case study, really. It puts a spotlight on how these serious allegations play out when huge celebrity and power are involved, how the system handles it, how we see it.
And understanding these early parts, the strategies, the dynamics, it gives you insight into how these things work, right? The legal tactics, media influence, all of it.
Definitely. So maybe we should start with the core of it, the actual charges. What exactly is Sean Combs up against?
Good place to start. Lay it out for us.
Okay, so federally, he's facing one count of racketeering conspiracy. That's the big one, often called IRECO.
Right, REPO. That implies a pattern, an organization involved in crime.
Precisely. It alleges a criminal enterprise. Then there are 2 counts of sex trafficking and 2 counts of transportation across state lines for the purpose of sex work.
So multiple serious federal charges and the potential penalty if he's convicted.
The maximum is life in prison, so the stakes could not be higher.
And we know he turned down a plea deal, right?
That's reported, yes. Which signals, he's planning to fight this all the way.
Now, the opening statements, they didn't just stick to those specific charges, did they? They seemed to paint a much broader picture.
Oh, absolutely. The prosecution especially. They brought up a whole range of other alleged crimes, things like kidnapping, arson, drug trafficking, other sex crimes, even bribery and obstruction.
Wow. So even though those aren't the charges he's on trial for now, they're using them to establish context.
Exactly. To build that narrative of a long-standing pattern of alleged criminal behavior connected to his enterprise.
Okay, so with all that hanging in the air, what was it like in the courtroom? The atmosphere?
Reports described it as really tense. You could feel the pressure, particularly, it seems, on the defense side.
And the public interest was massive, right? The lines, the media.
Huge, intense competition just to get a seat inside. It really highlights how much public fascination there is.
People selling spots in line. That's wild. What about DIDDY himself? How is he presenting?
Very controlled, calm. Observers said he was watching everything closely, nodding sometimes, even sort of mirroring his lawyer, Brian Steele.
Interesting, like projecting calm.
Yeah, descriptions like on his best behavior, even a literal statue, very still. But then there were also these little moments, apparently discreet smiles or gestures to family. It's a bit of a contrast.
A carefully managed image, maybe? Common in these high-profile cases, I suppose.
Very common. Trying to project control, maybe innocence, despite everything being said.
And his defense team. You said they seemed under pressure.
Yeah, the descriptions were more like stressed, maybe even a bit underprepared, some observers felt. Brian Steele looked very serious, apparently wearing glasses, which maybe signaled that.
Yeah.
And others on the team looked anxious.
Did he seem to notice?
There were mentions, yeah, of him looking over at his lawyers with like a look of concern sometimes, suggests maybe things weren't going as smoothly as planned, or perhaps just the intensity of the moment.
Gotcha. And the prosecution team?
They were described mostly as cool, powerful, motivated, though maybe a little sleep-deprived, which you'd expect.
You would, yeah. But there was that odd detail, the lawyers chatting beforehand.
Yeah. Right. Before the judge came in, apparently the prosecution and defense attorneys were just casually talking, like colleagues.
Strange juxtaposition, isn't it?
It shows that professional side, I guess. Even in these huge fights, there's a certain decorum or maybe just routine before the bell rings, so to speak.
The calm before the storm. Okay, so moving on to a really key part, jury selection. What happened there?
Well, the defense raised something called a Batson challenge.
Okay, what's that?
It's a legal objection. Basically, you argue the other side is using their peremptory strikes. Those are the ones where you can remove a juror without giving a reason. You argue they're using them to exclude jurors based on race.
And the defense felt the prosecution was doing that?
Yes. They claimed the prosecution used, I think it was 7 out of 9 of their strikes to remove black potential jurors, which is a very serious claim.
How did the prosecution respond?
They had to provide race-neutral reasons for each strike. They mentioned things like jurors knowing people involved or having family with prison time, maybe potential bias against police, language issues, or even worrying a juror had some kind of agenda.
Standard types of reasons, often.
Pretty standard, yeah. Things that could suggest bias unrelated to race.
And the judge?
The judge listened to both sides and ultimately denied the challenge. Said the defense hadn't shown enough evidence of purposeful discrimination.
So the jury was seated. What do we know about them? The group deciding his fate.
Reports say it's a diverse group, men, women, different ages, different backgrounds, and apparently some were taking very detailed notes right from the start.
Engaged then.
Okay.
Okay, so the trial begins proper. Opening statements. Let's start with the prosecution. Who gave it and how did it land?
Emily Johnson delivered it for the prosecution, and the general take was, well, a bit flat.
Flat? Really? In a case like this?
Yeah, maybe lacking strong emotion. Reports said she seemed to be reading a lot from notes, not making a ton of eye contact with the jury, which is maybe a strategic choice. Let the facts speak. Or perhaps just her style.
What was their main theme, though? Their core argument?
The headline was basically 20 years of the defendant's crimes. They argued he didn't act alone, but used his inner circle to help.
Right, the REAO angle again.
Exactly. And they went into specifics, mentioning alleged incidents involving Cassie and someone else called Jane. They really stressed what they called coercive and criminal sexual conduct.
So focusing on the nature of the acts, not just, say, lifestyle choices.
Precisely. They explicitly said this isn't about private preferences. It's about, quote, coercive and criminal acts. They also sort of preempted the defense by saying, look, some witnesses settled civil cases, but they'd still testify they wish the abuse never happened.
And Cassie's name came up right away.
Oh, yeah, very early. Positioned as a central alleged victim. They described this incident where Diddy was supposedly on the hunt for her because she was seeing someone else and allegedly threatened to kill that other guy.
Wow, that's a powerful opening shot.
Definitely sets a tone. And they didn't shy away from other disturbing details either.
Like what?
Allegations about Diddy keeping videos of Cassie with escorts, this alleged incident with a male stripper. They also claimed he used his staff, his bodyguards, to control women, making them part of the REO conspiracy.
And the hotel footage payment.
Right, they mentioned that too. Claimed a security guard got $100,000 for hotel footage of Cassie, just layering on these really serious allegations.
Okay, a very heavy opening from the prosecution. How did the defense respond? Who gave their statement?
Tenny Garagos gave the defense opening, and the description was generally more controlled, more eye contact with the jury. It seemed more commanding, perhaps.
And their strategy? What was the core message?
It was really interesting. They basically admitted some things up front.
Admitted? Like what?
Admitted to domestic violence. Admitted Diddy has a bad temper, used drugs, had a different sex life, as they put it.
Okay, but there's a but, right?
But they vehemently argued that none of that amounts to federal racketeering, sex trafficking, or prostitution. Their main line was, domestic violence is not sex trafficking, trying to create a clear legal separation.
So, concede the lesser points to fight the major charges. Classic defense move, maybe?
It can be, yeah. Frame it differently. Their themes were things like love, jealousy, infidelity, and money. They talked about voluntary adult choices made by capable adults, arguing these were consensual relationships.
So painting the alleged victims as making their own choices.
Exactly. Describe them as capable, strong adult women who made free choices and need to take personal responsibility. The implication, sort of, is that they were getting something out of it, too.
And how did they handle the witnesses who've sued him?
Addressed it head-on. Suggested they have millions of reasons to lie because of those civil suits, directly attacking their motives.
What about that hotel video the prosecution mentioned? The one with Cassie?
They called it indefensible, horrible, but they framed it as domestic violence, about jealousy over a phone, not sex trafficking.
Trying to contain the damage from that specific piece of evidence.
Yeah, and they added that these so-called freak-off videos were found on Cassie's devices too, not just his. Maybe trying to suggest she wasn't entirely under his control or that it was mutual.
So what was their overall goal then with this opening?
They said it explicitly to cancel that noise from the media and the civil cases. focus the jury only on whether the government proves these specific federal crimes beyond a reasonable doubt.
And they threw in some other details too, right, about Cassie?
Yeah, mentioned alleged jealousy towards Kim Porter, pointed out Cassie and Diddy hadn't seen each other in like 6.5 years until the trial, and even hinted she had money problems when she filed her lawsuit.
Really trying to muddy the waters around her credibility and motives?
Definitely. And they had that line, remember, is baby oil and lubricant a federal crime? And no. Very direct.
Trying to make the federal charges seem overblown, almost absurd in comparison to the details.
Seems like it. They also mention her initial $30 million demand, just constantly chipping away at the alleged victims' stories and motives.
Okay, so very different approaches in the opening statements.
Huh.
Then the trial moved to witnesses. Who was first up?
First witness for the prosecution was Israel Flores. He used to be the assistant director of security at the Intercontinental Hotel.
Ah, the hotel from the 2016 incident.
Exactly. He testified about seeing Diddy and Cassie that night, seeing a broken vase in the room, and then this alleged interaction later where he said he had to physically pin Diddy against a wall.
And the defense went right after him on cross-examination.
Immediately. Brian Steele really zeroed in on differences between Flores' testimony on the stand and the incident report he wrote back in 2016.
What kind of differences?
Things he said in court that weren't in the report, like seeing Diddy with a devilish, scary look, or Cassie having a purple eye, or Diddy telling her to leave. Steele hammered him on why those details were missing.
How did Flores explain that?
He basically said he didn't think every single detail was significant for the report at the time, or that some things, like the devilish look, were just his opinion. He also testified he didn't think Diddy was high or drunk.
And there was that weird bit about him filming the monitor.
Yeah, that was strange. He admitted taking videos of the hotel security monitor showing Diddy, said he wanted to show his wife because she might not believe him.
And he was commenting on his shoes in the video?
Apparently so. Commenting on his shiny shoes. It was an unexpected moment, played in court.
Did the defense try to explain the alleged cash payment differently?
Yeah, Steele suggested maybe the cash Flores mentioned was for damages to the room, but Flores shot that down, said the hotel doesn't take cash.
And Steele pushed back on the pinning against the wall story, too.
Oh, yeah. Questioned him hard on that, pointing out it wasn't in the incident report either. The whole cross-examination was clearly aimed at making Flores seem unreliable, inconsistent, undermining his credibility right out of the gate.
So that's the first witness done. What's next? What are we expecting soon?
The big one, really. Cassie is expected to testify this week.
Wow. That will be absolutely pivotal on it.
Hugely pivotal. Her testimony is so central to the prosecution's case.
And didn't the defense try to manage how she appears? Something about where she sits.
Yes. They asked the judge to have her already seated on the witness stand before the jury came in.
Why?
They argued that seeing her walk in, especially since she's reportedly pregnant, might make the jury sympathetic and prejudice them against Diddy.
How did the prosecution respond?
They objected, saying you don't treat witnesses differently based on, their condition.
And the judge
denied the defense request. So she'll walk in like any other witness.
Okay, so let's try to wrap up where we are for now. We've got the charges, the courtroom tension, the jury, these clashing opening statements, and the first witness being challenged. What are the big takeaways at this point?
Well, the biggest thing is just how different the two stories are, right? Prosecution, 20 years of crime, coercion, using his power, and people. Defense, okay, some bad behavior, domestic issues maybe, but not these federal crimes. These were voluntary adult choices, and the accusers might be lying for money.
It really boils down to which narrative the jury buys into.
Exactly. And witness testimony, especially Cassie's, is going to be absolutely crucial for that. We're still very early, but the battle lines are clearly drawn.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How these strategies play out, how a jury might see things. What stood out most to you so far? What questions does it raise going forward?
For me, it's that defense strategy of admitting some things. It's bold. Will the jury buy that distinction between domestic violence and federal racketeering or trafficking? That's the huge question. And of course, how will Cassie hold up under cross-examination? How will her story match what the prosecution laid out?
Yeah. And this whole case, the media frenzy around it, it feels like it plugs into our conversations, about powerful people, accountability, how we even understand relationships when they end up in court.
It really does. It's a stark example of how power, fame, alleged wrongdoing, and public perception all get tangled together. It makes you think about the challenges of finding truth, or at least legal accountability, in situations like this.
So as this trial continues, it's definitely worth watching, thinking critically about the information coming out.
Absolutely. Follow the reporting, for sure. And maybe even, look into what racketeering and sex trafficking laws actually say. It helps understand the legal fight that's happening.
Good advice. Thanks for breaking all this down. It definitely gives a clearer sense of what's going on beneath the headlines.
Happy to do it. It's going to be a long road, I think.